I asked him if he enjoyed music at school. He said he hated music at school. He said all they did was play classical records, and it had no effect on him. He said he went through the whole of his time at school, and nobody ever thought he had any musical talent. Paul McCartney. One of the other people in the same class was George Harrison, the lead guitarist of the popular music group, the Beatles. And nobody thought he had any talent either in music. So I was thinking about this, that there was this one music teacher in Liverpool in the 1950s who had half the Beatles in his class. En he missed it.
Scholen en onderwijzers ontdekken de talenten van kinderen vaak niet, omdat ze te veel focussen op één bepaalde intelligentie, het abstract denken.
Well, my point about this really is twofold. One is that this division between academic and vocational courses is riddled with misconceptions. One of them is that if you do work that involves actually making things or fixing things or doing things, that this is somehow mindless activity that any automaton could do. That there is no intellectual dimension to this. It's a ridiculous conception in every way. I often say, you know, if all we had was academic ability, most of human culture would never have happened. You know, there'd be no practical science, there'd be no technology, there'd be no art, no music, there'd be no practical business, there'd be no architecture, no love, no relationships, no anything. And for our kids, mobile phones and laptops and iPods, they're not technology. They're just human rights. You know, they're utilities. You know, it's like fresh water. They just expect to have them. A constant stream of digital information. Whereas we grew up where none of these things existed. I mean, it's only 15 years really since we've had an internet. And we had to wear a device to tell the time. My daughter never wears a watch. Nor does my son. They don't see the point. You know, she says, why do you wear a separate thing to tell the time? Because for them it's everywhere. It's on every gadget they've got. And as my daughter said, you know, it's like a one-function device. You know, like how pathetic is that? You know, one function. And I said, no, it tells the date. You know, as well, it has many functions. But the thing is, you were brought up in a world as well where digital culture, you live in a world now where digital culture is everywhere, so you don't need to wear this either. We just do it because we take it for granted we have to. Now, taking things for granted is the heart of the problem in a way. If you want to be genuinely innovative or creative, and I'll come on to why I think we should be, being creative means challenging what you take for granted. And I think this is especially true in education just now. We have to challenge the things we've stopped thinking about. And we have to surface them and think them through again. Bertolt Brecht once said, as soon as something seems the most obvious thing in the world, it means that any attempt to understand it has been abandoned. So common sense is our enemy here, I think, if we're looking for radical transformations. Human beings are deeply invested in and affected by how they are educated. And what they become depends, to a critical degree, on the range and breadth and quality of their education. Many of the people I interviewed in the book did very well at school. An awful lot of them didn't. Very many of them really didn't succeed until they had recovered from their education. And this isn't because teachers are to blame. I really believe this. I've spent my life in education. I'm not criticizing individual teachers or individual schools. Most teachers, in my experience, aim to do the best of their students in good faith in order to give them the best possible start or to impart their discipline to them. It's not the individual teacher so much, although there are some bad ones, like there are bad anything. It's the fact that education is a system. And it was developed systematically to meet particular economic purposes. It was developed in the 19th century mainly under the intellectual influences of the 18th century, but to meet the needs of the old industrial economies. The truth is, the heart of education is the one thing that many policymakers don't seem to understand, which is pedagogy. The only thing that ever makes a difference to children in schools is the quality of teaching. And education does not happen in the committee rooms of our government buildings. It happens in your classrooms. So far as children are concerned, you are their education, not whatever the government ministers happen to say about anything or whatever the cultural policy happens to be. And as soon as we recognise that that relationship is really what matters, I think we find we've got a lot of freedom in conducting that relationship. But it's about recognising that the true gift we have as individuals, as people, is this extraordinary power of imagination. And if you energise a child's imagination, if you engage their own creative capacities, their own capacities to come up with new ideas, new possibilities, if you address the range of their thinking styles, extraordinary things begin and they always do.